Hello, everyone. Are you able to hear me clearly? Can you please raise your hand just so that I know that you are able to hear me clearly and loudly? Okay, I just see two hands. Oh, yes, there's one more. I'm going to be sharing the screen with you right now. Please let me know if you can see my screen. Um, if you can, please raise your hand or any way to let me know. Okay, that's good news. Okay, so welcome everyone. I will be starting with my presentation on ELISA kits. Um, Today, the topic of my discussion will be BioVision's ELISA kits. There'll be lots of information regarding what kind of ELISA kits we have, what kind of research categories we have, what kind of targets we have for ELISA kits. If you have any questions, please do let me know, and I will try my level best to answer all your questions. So let's start with a simple introduction about ELISA, which is enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. So what does it exactly mean? It is an enzyme-based assay that is used to measure antibodies or proteins or antigens in biological samples. This particular assay can be performed using um, okay. Are you able to see the transition of the slides? Yeah. So this particular assay can be conducted in 96 well plates. So we can say that ELISAs allow us to process multiple samples simultaneously. So the basic principle of an ELISA is that antigen is coated on the ELISA plate, and then you add your primary antibody, which will bind to the antigen of interest. Now, in order to quantify or to detect the antigen of interest, you need to have some kind of molecule that will quantify this particular antigen of interest. So what you do is that you add an enzyme, you conjugate an enzyme to a primary antibody. Um, this enzyme will then react with a substrate solution, which is added later. Addition of enzyme and the substrate will create a kind of an interaction between the two substances, and it will produce a colored reaction. So this colored reaction will then be directly proportional to the amount of antigen that is present in your wells. So this is like a general principle of ELISA. Some of the advantages of ELISA are ELISA assays are highly sensitive and they are very specific. These assays are high throughput, which means that ELISAs can generally be conducted in 96 well plates, but they can also be conducted in 384 well plates too. Now, there are different kinds of biological samples that you can use or that can be analyzed using the ELISA assay. And finally, the ELISA assays are easy to use and the protocols are very much simple to follow. They are not complicated at all. Now that I have given you a general introduction about ELISA, there are 4 different types of ELISAs and there are modifications to the principle of these ELISAs. There are direct ELISAs, indirect ELISAs, sandwich ELISAs, and competitive ELISAs. So today I will be just talking about 2 particular ELISAs because most of our ELISA kits are in these 2 particular formats. One is the sandwich ELISA and the other is competitive ELISA. So what is the principle of sandwich ELISA? Okay, So the principle of sandwich ELISA is that you have two types of antibodies. Okay, one antibody is coated on the plate, and that antibody is called as the capture antibody. The other antibody is called as the detection antibody, which will bind to the antigen of interest. So you add your antigen of interest, which will bind first to the capture antibody, and then later on you add your detection antibody of interest, which will again bind to your antigen of interest. Um, in order to detect your antigen of interest, you have something called as enzyme, which will be conjugated to your detection antibody. And the enzyme then reacts with substrate, which is denoted by the letter S. An enzyme and substrate will form a colored reaction or color product, and you can quantify the amount of antigen of interest present in the sample based on this colored product. On the other hand, if you see competitive ELISA has a little bit of different principle. So it's basically the competition between two antigens to bind to the primary antibody. So initially you will have a reference antigen which is coated on the plate. You will have samples containing antigens. What you will do is that you will transfer the antibody or the primary antibody solution into the sample containing the antigen. And as a result, it will form antigen and antibody complex. Now, more number of antigens that are present in the sample, the more it will bind to primary antibody. So ultimately, then you transfer this antigen antibody sample solution to the plate or to the well that contains the reference antigen. Now, if you have less primary antibody, it will bind less to reference antigen, and therefore the color will be less developed. So in case of competitive ELISA, the intensity of color developed is inversely proportional to the antigen that you want to detect. So these are the two principles of competitive ELISA and sandwich ELISA. Next, we move on to some of the advantages and disadvantages of ELISAs. Of course, each assay has its own advantages and disadvantages. But here, for time constraint reasons, I'll be just talking about sandwich ELISA and competitive ELISA advantages and disadvantages. So for sandwich ELISA, advantages are that they are highly specific and sensitive compared to direct and indirect ELISA. And you can use this particular assay for complex samples. Whereas if you look at the disadvantages, this particular assay is very expensive to perform. Also, it takes a long amount of time. More incubation, more number of washing steps are included in sandwich ELISA. Also, the experimental design can be very time consuming and challenging. On the other hand, when you look at the advantages of competitive ELISA, it has the highest flexibility and specificity. And also this particular assay is highly robust. But if you look at the disadvantages of it, you can just use one antibody in this assay. And this assay is useful only for small antigens. And the experimental design can be complex many a times. So now that I have introduced you to the ELISA assay, the principle of ELISA, the advantages of and disadvantages of different types of ELISA, now we will move towards our portfolio of ELISA kits. So BioVision's ELISA kits, as you know, consists of 800 plus ELISA kits. They generally are of the sandwich ELISA principle and competitive ELISA principle. Our ELISA kits are species specific. That means they are specific for humans, mouse, rat, or they are universal species too. Large variety of samples can be tested using our ELISA kits. it could be either serum samples, plasma samples, urine, saliva, cell and tissue lysates. There are different kinds of samples that you can use with our ELISA kits. BioVision's ELISA kits encompass a variety of research areas such as cancer, neuroscience, immunology, etc. And I will be talking about each of these research areas in detail in my forthcoming slides. Next, BioVision's ELISA kits are highly specific and highly sensitive. We can detect as low as picogram amounts of the samples. And these are very sensitive assays. Next, our assays are simple to use. Our ELISA kits are simple to use. The assays can be performed using plate reader that can measure absorbance at 450 nanometers. The interplate and intraplate variability is very low, which means it is less than 10% of variability. When I say interplate, that means variability between two or more plates. When I say intraplate variability, that means variability within the same plate itself. Then we also offer competitive pricing on our ELISA kits. And lastly, we also give bulk quotes. So in case if you have customers interested in bulk quantities of ELISA kits, we can of course give you bulk pricing too. Now, as you know, there are 800 plus ELISA kits, and it's very difficult to talk about each and every ELISA kit in this such a short time frame. So it's best if we discuss them in terms of research areas. So I have broadly classified my presentation into two research categories: ELISA kits by research area and ELISA kits by targets. So when you talk about research area, following are the research area that I will be talking about in my presentation. We have epigenetics, we have cancer, we have neuroscience, immunology, stem cells, infectious diseases, and toxicology. And we have ELISA kits by targets. So we have ELISA kits for biosimilars, we have ELISA kits for biomarkers, cytokines, growth factors, and isotype controls. Moving on to our first subcategory in research area, that is epigenetics. What do you mean by epigenetics? Okay, so epigenetics is the study of biological mechanisms that turn genes on and off. Epigenetics basically tells the cells which genes it needs to turn on and which genes it needs to turn off. It does not affect the DNA sequence, but it only tells you how to read a particular gene, or it tells you whether a gene is supposed to be switched on or switched off. Just to give you a simple example, let's consider a nerve cell and a muscle cell. Both nerve cells and muscle cells have the same DNA, but they perform very different functions. The function of the nerve cell is to transmit information from one cell to another, whereas the muscle cell, the main function is allow the body to move. So what epigenetics does over here is that it indicates, or it allows genes to switch on. In case of muscle cells, it will switch on only those genes that will allow the body to move, and it will turn off the genes that transmit information from one cell to another. Same thing happens with the nerve cell. So epigenetics will turn on genes that will transmit information from one cell to another, but it will switch off genes that will enable the body to move. So you can call epigenetics as directors of the movie, just as the directors tweak certain scenes and dialogues and make a movie better. Similarly, epigenetics may turn the certain genes on or off, which may make the human body better or worse. So why do we need to study epigenetics? So epigenetics basically tells us how a gene is regulated, how cell undergoes differentiation, how a disease occurs, or what is the pathogenesis of the disease, how aging occurs. So once we know all this information, we can then devise strategies or therapeutic treatments to treat certain diseases. This also involves personalized medicine, which are basically, which it means that you are designing treatment strategies for each individual person according to his response to certain treatments. This is called as personalized medicine. So, in order to help scientists and researchers to study how a gene regulation occurs or how a disease occurs, and to devise treatment strategies related to epigenetics, we have certain ELISA kits in this particular subcategory of epigenetics. And you can see these are some of the examples that we have. The ones that are bestsellers in this particular category are highlighted in yellow background. And let's say, for example, HDAC2 ELISA kit, K4197, and Certoin 1, K4923. These are the two bestsellers in this particular research category. So HDAC, what do you mean by HDAC? It is histone deacetylase. A very broad or a general function of deacetylase is to turn the genes off. In case if it does not turn the genes off, then it results in disorders such as cancer. Sirtuins are also perform similar functions as that of histones, histone deacetylases. They also deacetylase epigenetic proteins and non-epigenetic proteins. Next, we move on to another research category, that is cancer. So what do you mean by cancer? So in general, a normal healthy cell knows how much to divide and when to divide. It has a particular checkpoint that gives it direction, that tells it you need to divide only up to this particular level. You need to divide only up to a certain level. Only you can also divide up to a certain number of times. Normal cells also know when to die. So if a particular normal cell has become old, then it activates a death program, or it undergoes cell death. In case of cancer, this is totally opposite. So cancer cells do not have any of these checkpoints that tell them you need to stop growing, or you need to stop dividing, or you need to stop proliferating. So the cancer cells grow abnormally. There is uncontrolled growth of these cells. There is uncontrolled proliferation, uncontrolled division. Cancer cells do not undergo cell death at all. In fact, what they do is that they invade and destroy normal tissue. So cancer cells generally form clumps of cells called tumors. And sometimes these cancer cells, they break off from these cluster of tumor cells, and they travel to new areas in the body, and they start uncontrollably dividing and abnormally dividing and growing and forming new tumors. So this spread of tumors is called as metastasis. So why do we need to study cancer? So we need to understand what genes are involved in the metastasis of cancer, what pathways contribute to metastasis of cancer. So once we know what genes are involved, what pathways are involved, what are the mechanisms for metastasis, we can then devise strategies to detect, prevent, uh, and treat cancers and ensure better quality of life. In order to do so, in order to help our scientists in field of cancer, we have certain ELISA kits for cancer research. These are some of the examples of ELISA kits in cancer research. Again, the ones that are good sellers in this particular category are highlighted in yellow background. Let's take in, for example, 4-HNE or 4-hydroxynonenal ELISA kit, that is E4645. This particular compound is oxidative stress marker. This particular compound, what it does is that it promotes, or it enables the cancer cells to divide, to grow, to proliferate, and to undergo metastasis. We have another target over here, which is 8-OHDG, which is catalog number K4160. This is another oxidative stress marker, and again, it enables in the proliferation of the cancer cells. We have a third ELISA kit, which is CXCR ELISA kit, which is also one of the best sellers, K4194. Next, we move on to another research category, which is called neuroscience research. Now, what do you mean by neuroscience? Neuroscience is basically the study of the structure and function of the brain and the nervous system. As we know, brain is a very brilliant organ. One of its major functions is that it controls every aspect of the human body. It controls emotions, it controls memory, it controls movement and breathing. And neuroscience basically is the study of how brain carries out all these tasks. Now, as you can see on the diagram on the slide, brain is divided into different regions. Each of these regions perform a specific task. If this brain region does not perform a specific task, then it results in diseases or neurological disorders. And some of the neurological disorders uh, that we know are Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, autism, epilepsy, etc. So neuroscience, so study of neuroscience is very important if we want to understand what kind of genes are involved, what pathways are involved in these neurological disorders, and to enable scientists to devise treatment strategies for the treatment of these diseases. We have certain ELISA kits for neuroscience research. These are some of the examples of ELISA kits. Cortisol, for example, is one of the good sellers in neuroscience research category. So cortisol is a hormone that is produced by adrenal glands. Cortisol is dubbed as a stress hormone. It basically helps the body to fight stressful conditions. Dopamine K4219. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that enables us to feel calm and relaxed. It is basically dubbed as a feel-good chemical. Next, we have norepinephrine, which is again another neurotransmitter, which is associated with feelings of happiness, anxiety, or emotions. Next, we move on to immunology research. So immunology is the study of immune system in all organisms. So immune system is basically a collection of specialized cells, tissues, and organs that are tasked with protecting our body from invasion by pathogenic microorganisms. So consider our body as galaxy. So immune system is the guardian of our galaxy. And basically what it does is that if it detects any foreign cells such as bacteria, virus, or fungi, so it will redirect the immune cells towards those foreign cells, and it will ask the immune cells to destroy these foreign cells. If the immune system is dysfunctional, then unfortunately, our body will be attacked by these infectious organisms, and it will lead to infectious diseases, autoimmune diseases, cancer, inflammatory diseases, etc. So, immune system is very critical for human survival as well as animal survival. So immune system can also help us design various immunotherapies such as cancer immunotherapies, antibody immunotherapies, small molecules and drugs, vaccines, and help us fight these diseases or disorders. So we have certain ELISA kits for immunology research. These are some of the examples. Let's say, for example, interferon gamma. This is one of our good sellers in this particular research category. So interferon gamma is a key immune molecule or immune system molecule that produces an anti-tumor immune response. We have another bestseller in this particular category, which is PD-1. So PD-1 is also called as programmed cell death protein. And this particular protein is located on the cell surface. and it basically allows proliferation of the tumor cells and enables the tumor cells to escape immune system surveillance. Next, in connection to immunology, we have autoimmune diseases. As I had mentioned earlier, what is the function of the normal immune system? It is to identify and destroy foreign cells. So at any time any immune system detects any foreign cells, it will produce antibodies, and these antibodies will in turn destroy the foreign cells. Also, another function of the normal immune system is that it will differentiate between self tissues as well as foreign tissues and foreign cells. And it will generate antibodies only against foreign cells or tissues. In case of autoimmune diseases, the autoimmune system is unable to differentiate between self tissues and foreign tissues, or self cells and foreign cells. In fact, what it will do is that it will generate antibodies, and these antibodies will attack its own tissues or own healthy cells. This results in inflammation and ultimately leads to tissue damage. Um, as you know, there are more than 80 types of autoimmune diseases. These are among the top 10 diseases worldwide, affecting these autoimmune diseases also affect more than 23 million Americans. And some of the examples of autoimmune diseases are rheumatoid arthritis, type 1 diabetes, etc. So why do we need to study autoimmune diseases? With the help of autoimmune diseases, we can understand the cause of the disease, what are the genes involved in these diseases, what are the antibodies generated against tissues or self cells, what are the regulatory mechanisms involved. And once we know the cause of the disease, the genetic factors and regulatory mechanisms, we can then devise strategies to diagnose, prevent, and treat autoimmune diseases. Although autoimmune diseases are uncurable, but at least we can devise treatments which can help us to detect, not only detect autoimmune diseases early in stage, but also to reduce the extent of autoimmune disease effect. So we have certain ELISA kits for autoimmune diseases. For example, we have quick detect acetylcholine ELISA kits, which is catalog E4452. We have myelin oligodendrocyte glycoprotein ELISA kit, which is E4963. This is also one of our popular kits in this particular category. Next, we move on to stem cell research. So what do you mean by stem cells? So stem cells are unspecialized cells that are capable of differentiating into any type of cells. Another important feature of stem cells is that they have the ability to self-renew. Now, if you look at the diagram on the slide, you can see stem cells can generate into either intestinal cells, they can either generate into liver cells, muscle cells, blood cells, etc. So there are various applications of stem cells. Stem cells can help us study the pathology of the diseases. So scientists can generate stem cells in the lab, and they can recreate disease conditions in the lab, and they can study the pathology of the diseases. Once you know what is the pathology of the disease, what are the genetic factors involved, or what are the regulatory mechanisms, scientists can then test different drugs or novel drugs to see if these drugs are effective against those diseases, uh, or they are not effective against those particular diseases. Next, stem cells are important for regenerative medicine. Now, if you see the examples such as Parkinson's, Alzheimer's disease, sometimes the cells or the tissues are damaged beyond repair. So in this case, stem cells can replace these damaged cells or tissues. And as you know, stem cells have the ability to self-renew. So they can form new healthy variations of these cells and tissues, and can definitely help replace damaged cells and tissues. So following are the ELISA kits that we have for stem cell research. Um, for example, we have OCT4 ELISA kit, we have SOX2 ELISA kits. Both OCT4 and SOX2, these are stem cell markers, and their main function is that they allow differentiation of embryonic stem cells. Um, these are some of the best sellers of our stem cell research category. Next, we move on to infectious diseases. So what do we mean by infectious diseases? Infectious diseases are diseases that are caused by microorganisms such as bacteria, virus, and fungi. Um, Infectious diseases can be spread via different modes of transmission. They can be transmitted by direct contact or indirect contact, from person to person, or animal contact, or indirect as in if you touch a particular inanimate object such as doorknob or door handle or etc. These are some of the ways that infectious diseases can spread. Infectious diseases can also spread through contaminated food, water, or environment. They can also spread through aerosol droplets. So, as I had mentioned previously, immune system safeguards the human body from infection caused by microorganisms. And if the immune system is dysfunctional, then the human body is susceptible to attack by microorganisms, and it results in infectious diseases. So some of the examples of infectious diseases are HIV/AIDS, COVID-19 disease, influenza, malaria, and hepatitis. So some of the ELISA kits that are popular or bestsellers in the infectious diseases categories are as follows. So we have SARS-CoV-2, IgG and IgM ELISA kits. We have SARS-CoV-2 nucleocapsid and IgG ELISA kits. So SARS-CoV-2 is the novel coronavirus that has been responsible for this worldwide pandemic called the COVID-19 disease. So basically, these ELISA kits are detecting antibodies generated against these viruses, or rather more specifically to the spike proteins of these viruses. So as you know, the spike proteins of coronaviruses are essential for entry of the viruses into the host cell. So these ELISA kits are generally detecting the antibodies to those spike proteins. Then we have antibodies to nucleocapsid proteins also. So nucleocapsid proteins are important for replication of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So these are some of the bestsellers in our infectious disease research category. Next, we move on to toxicology research. So what do we mean by toxicology? Toxicology is basically the study of biological effect of drugs, chemicals, and other agents on living organisms. So in toxicology, what scientists do is that they study the relationship between doses and effect. They try different doses of these chemicals and drugs, and they see which of these doses have harmful effects. Once they have identified the harmful effect or the harmful dose, they then set up safe exposure limits. They then introduce policies and regulations that are necessary to protect living organisms as well as our environment. So we have different types of kits in this particular category of toxicology research. We have ELISA kits that measure food toxins. We have ELISA kits that measure antibiotics or antibiotic residues. We have ELISA kits that measure biological toxins as well. Among these different types of kits, we have ELISA kits for antibiotics, which are bestsellers in this particular category. And I'll be elaborating a little bit in detail about antibiotics ELISA kits as well. So let me introduce you to antibiotics. What are antibiotics? Antibiotics are basically antimicrobial compounds that are able to kill or inhibit the growth of bacteria and other microorganisms. Without antibiotics, our bodies will be susceptible to infectious pathogens or attacked by these infectious pathogens, and it will lead to prolonged illness and may result in death. So, one of the major functions of antibiotics is to treat diseases in both humans as well as animals. In addition to that, antibiotics also improve feed efficiency and also improve animal breeding. Now, sometimes antibiotics are used in excess or they are misused. Once they are used in excess or misused, the microorganisms tend to become resistant to these drug treatments, and eventually they end up forming antibiotic resistant strains. Now, these antibiotic resistant strains are very difficult to treat with current treatment strategies. Um, these antibiotic resistant strains are also detrimental not only to human health but also to the environment as well as to the animals. So, in addition to the antibiotic resistant strains, we also have antibiotic residues that may be present in animals as well as in humans. So, upon antibiotic treatment, there may be antibiotic residues that may be present in humans and animals. In case of animals, it may be present in meat, milk, eggs. In case of humans, it may be present in serum or plasma samples. And some of these antibiotic residues may have adverse health effects on humans as well as animals. So, in order to detect these antibiotic residues, we have certain ELISA kits um, that enable us to detect these antibiotics. Um, as you can see in this particular table, some of our best sellers in this particular research category are the gentamicin ELISA kit, the kanamycin ELISA kit, and the vancomycin ELISA kit, K4206, K4210, and K4605. These are some of the best sellers of antibiotic ELISA kits in this toxicology research category. Then we have aflatoxin B ELISA kits as well, and we have caffeine ELISA kits that are popular in the toxicology research category as well. So moving on to the other category of ELISA kits by targets. We have ELISA kits for biosimilar antibodies. We have ELISA kits for biomarkers, cytokines, growth factors and hormones, and isotype controls. So moving on to our first category, that is biosimilar ELISA kits for biosimilar antibodies. So what do you mean by biosimilar antibodies? Biosimilar antibodies are monoclonal antibodies that are biologically similar to a US FDA approved drug. Now, these biosimilar antibodies are produced in living organisms, and the method of production is different compared to that of an FDA approved drug. These biosimilar antibodies are also similar in terms of safety and efficacy as their original FDA approved drugs. However, they are more advantageous compared to the original drugs. They cost cheap, they are cheaper in costs than the original drug, and they also help reduce healthcare costs associated with treatment of diseases. Now, biosimilars are used to treat diseases such as cancer, autoimmune diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis, we have hematologic diseases, etc., or blood-borne diseases, as you can call it as. So as you can see on this particular slide, I have highlighted a few key brand names which will help you to identify the which will help you to understand biosimilar ELISA or biosimilar antibodies. Let's say, for example, Keytruda. Okay, Keytruda is a brand name for the monoclonal antibody that is pembrolizumab. Keytruda is approved by the US FDA to treat various forms of cancer, such as skin cancer, lung cancer, head and neck cancer, etc. Similarly, Humira is the brand name for adalimumab, and Humira is basically important for the treatment of um, rheumatoid arthritis. Now, this is just an example to help you understand biosimilar antibodies. Um, just to let you know that although I have mentioned the brand names on this particular PowerPoint presentation, it does not mean that we sell these original FDA approved drugs for therapeutic purposes. We only sell biosimilar antibody versions of these FDA approved drugs. And our biosimilar antibodies and biosimilar ELISA kits are strictly for lab research use only. So moving on to the methods of detection. So we have two types of detection of these biosimilar ELISA kits. We have ELISA assays that measure free drug or free biosimilar antibodies. And we have ELISA assays that measure antibodies to the drug or antibodies to the biosimilar antibodies. So there is a difference in the principle as well of these two methods of detection. Let's take, for example, the free drug or the free biosimilar ELISA. In this particular ELISA assay, you are measuring the amount of free biosimilar or the free drug that is present in the samples. So the basic principle is that you coat the ELISA plate with antigen that is synonymous with the biosimilar antibody, or that is reactive to the biosimilar antibody. Later, you add your sample containing the free drug, which will go and bind to this antigen of interest. Then you add your secondary antibody, which is conjugated to the HRP. Next, you add an enzyme such as biotin, and you add a substrate. And this enzyme substrate complex will form a colored reaction, which will be directly proportional to the amount of free drug or free biosimilar that is present in the sample. And you can see in the standard curve below, that is how you can quantify the amount of free drug or the free biosimilar present in your samples. On the other hand, you have a qualitative assay, which is the ELISA assay that detects the antibodies against biosimilar antibodies or biosimilar drugs. So when patients are treated with these biosimilar antibodies, they usually develop antibodies, and these antibodies may adversely affect the therapeutic treatment. So in order to detect these antibodies present in patient samples, we have this particular ELISA assay. So the principle of this particular ELISA assay is as follows. First, you coat the micro ELISA plate with the free drug, such as example, durvalumab is one of the biosimilar antibody. So you coat the plate with durvalumab. Then you introduce your samples which contain antibodies to durvalumab. Then you add your secondary antibody, which will bind to your antibody to durvalumab. And the secondary antibody is conjugated to an HRP enzyme. Um, then you add a biotin enzyme followed by substrate. Now biotin enzyme and the substrate will form a colored product. And the interpretation of the data in this particular assay is as follows. So when you perform this particular assay, along with your samples, you need to have a positive control and a negative control. A positive control will basically tell you whether your kit is working fine or no. Your negative control will basically will give you a negative result. It is supposed to tell you that your sample is specific for the drug itself, and a negative control will not bind to your sample of interest or to your drug of interest. So hence it is called as negative control. So you need to calculate the ratio of the optical density or the absorbance value of the sample and the negative control. If the ratio of the sample and the negative control is less than 0.3, then it means that the sample does not contain antibodies to durvalumab, biosimilar antibody. If the ratio of the sample and the negative control is greater than 0.3, then it means that your samples definitely contain antibodies to durvalumab. So these are the two methods of detection for biosimilar antibodies. Next, these are some of the examples of the biosimilar antibodies that we have in this category. And the best sellers in this particular category are highlighted in yellow. So we have pembrolizumab ELISA-kit E4383-100. We have cetuximab ELISA-kit, which is E4379. And we have ipilimumab ELISA-kit, which is E4384. All these three ELISA kits, they measure free drug or free biosimilar antibody present in your samples. So next we move on to biomarkers. So what do we mean by biomarkers? So biomarkers are biological molecules that are present in blood or tissue samples, and they help predict healthy or disease state of the human body. So how do we know that a particular biomarker is predicting a healthy state or a disease state? Let's say, for example, you want to find out that a particular biomarker is involved in the pathogenesis of cancer. So in this case, you will extract sample from the patient, you will process the sample, you will analyze the expression of the biomarker in this particular sample, and you will compare the expression of this biomarker with a normal, with a sample that is often considered as a standard or a normal sample. Now, if the expression of the biomarker is the same as the normal or the standard, then in that case, the biomarker does not contribute to the disease. But if there is a change in expression, the expression may be either high or the expression may be low. So in that case, we can conclude that the biomarker may be playing a role in the pathogenesis of disease such as cancer. So certain applications of biomarkers are as follows. It helps us to understand the mechanism of action in normal versus the disease state. It also helps us to predict risk or recurrence of a disease. It can be used as a diagnostic marker, or it can also serve as a prognostic marker. And it also helps us to screen for tumor biomarkers or certain cancer biomarkers as well. Finally, biomarkers can also be used to determine appropriate therapy for patients, such as personalized medicine. So we can devise treatment strategies that are specific for the individuals with the help of biomarkers. So biomarkers, these are some of the examples of ELISA kits for biomarkers. As you can see, C-reactive protein. C-reactive protein is the function of the C-reactive protein is basically a biomarker for inflammatory diseases or infections. Then we have lipocalin-2 ELISA kit E4585. Lipocalin-2 or NGAL is a biomarker for kidney injury. And we have alpha fetoprotein ELISA kit, which is K4242, which is another good seller in this particular category. It is a biomarker for liver cancers. Next, we move on to cytokines, growth factors, and hormones. So what do we mean by cytokines, growth factors, and hormones? So cytokines, growth factors, and hormones are signaling molecules that basically tell a particular cell to perform a particular task. So these signaling molecules, as you can see in the diagram, they are produced by one particular type of cell, and then they instruct the target cell to produce a biological response. Um, this biological response could be anything. For example, it could be to proliferate, it could enable the cells to proliferate, it could probably ask the cells to grow, it could enable the cells to differentiate, it could even mean the cells should die by apoptosis or cell or perform certain metabolic functions. So cytokines, growth factors, and hormones are involved in a variety of biological processes, and abnormal production of these signaling molecules may lead to various diseases and disorders such as cancer, HIV, diabetes, etc. So um, just to give you um, uh, a, an example, so let's say in case of hormones, suppose you're feeling thirsty. So in that case, there will be a particular cell that will release hormones that will enable the target cells to generate a biological response, which is thirst, and enable the body to um, um, perform that particular function. Similarly, cytokines, their major function is that they will redirect the cells to fight certain diseases. They will direct the cells to detect these infectious diseases or these infectious pathogens that are entering the body and enable them to fight these infectious pathogens and stop diseases from affecting human body. So these are some of the examples of cytokines, growth factors, and hormones. Um, some of the examples of the ELISA kits for cytokines, growth factors, and hormones are as follows. Progesterone is one of the good sellers in this particular category. So progesterone main function is that it is a hormone and it plays a critical function in menstrual cycle. Um, Progesterones also play a role in growth of cancers. We have triiodothyronine, that is T3 ELISA kit. So T3 or triiodothyronine, its basic function is to control metabolic rate. It also controls energy levels, internal body temperature. If there are high levels of T3 detected in your body, then that indicates that you have thyroid disease. Next, we have adrenaline, that is epinephrine, which is E4359. Adrenaline is also known as fight or flight hormone. Its main function is to help your body deal with dangers and certain stressful conditions. Next, we move on to isotype controls. What do you mean by isotype controls? So isotype controls are antibodies that have similar properties as that of primary antibodies. But the only thing that is different is that it will not specifically bind to the target protein of interest. So isotype controls will help you to differentiate between non-specific staining as well as specific staining. And these isotype controls can be used for a variety of experiments such as flow cytometry, immunohistochemistry or IHC, ELISAs, Western blot, etc. These are some of the ELISA kits that are popular in this particular category. We have Quick Detect Security IgA ELISA kit, Quick Detect IgA ELISA kit, and IgE ELISA kits. Now, in quite a few slides, you may have noticed that in the product name, we have a regular name and then we have a Quick Detect ELISA kit. Okay, we have a regular ELISA kit and we have a Quick Detect ELISA kit. So what is this Quick Detect ELISA kit? How is it different from the regular ELISA kit? So Quick Detect ELISA kit has the following principle. You have a capture antibody that is coated onto the plate. then you add target protein of interest, then you directly add HRP conjugate reagent, which will go and bind to this target protein of interest. After addition of this HRP conjugate reagent, you can then incubate this complex for a certain period of time. Then you wash the plate and then you add chromogen A and chromogen B solution. And you incubate this complex again. And then you stop the reaction. And then whatever color is developed at the end of this reaction, you will measure the color. And this intensity of color will be directly proportional to the amount of target protein that is present in your samples. In case of regular ELISA, it's a totally different protocol. So in regular ELISA, you will have your target, you will have your capture antibody coated onto the plate. You will add target protein of interest. There will be an incubation step. Then after the incubation step, you will wash the plate and then you will add biotin labeled secondary antibody to it. And you will again incubate the complex. After incubation, you again wash and you again add HRP streptavidin conjugate to the plate. Then again, you add TMB substrate solution and finally stop the reaction. The enzyme and the substrate will form a colored product, and that will be directly proportional to target protein of interest. But as you may have noticed that there is a major difference between the two assays. So in quick detect ELISAs, the assay time is less than 90 minutes compared to regular ELISA, which is 2 hours or more than 2 hours. There are fewer incubation steps and wash steps in quick detect ELISA compared to regular ELISA. The results are more consistent compared to regular ELISA. Also, the volume of samples needed in quick detect ELISAs are very less compared to regular ELISA. So you will use 10 microliters of the samples versus 100 microliters of samples in regular ELISA. So these are the following examples of quick detect ELISA kits that we have. And the ones that are highlighted are some of the key sellers of quick detect ELISA kits. We have GABA ELISA kit or quick detect GABA ELISA kit. So GABA is a neurotransmitter and its main function is to help reduce anxiety. Then we have quick detect beta endorphin ELISA kit, and beta endorphin is a hormone that helps block sensations of pain. Then we have a quick detect BSA ELISA kit or bovine serum albumin. Bovine serum albumin has multiple functions. It is either used as blocking agent in Western blot. It is used as a nutrient in cell culture assays. It is also present in vaccines, in medications, etc. So bovine serum albumin has a variety of applications. So this particular kit is also one of our good sellers in this category of quick detect ELISA kits. So we move on to the summary of BioVision's ELISA kits. As I have discussed, they are broadly divided into two categories. One is based on research area. And in research area, you will see there are various subcategories, that is epigenetics, cancer, neuroscience, immunology, infectious disease, stem cells, and toxicology. Then it was also categorized based on targets, where we have biosimilar antibodies, cytokines, growth factors, hormones, biomarkers, and isotype controls. These are some of the best sellers from each research category as well as targets. So as I had previously mentioned in all my slides, this is just a revision of what are the best sellers of each category. I'm just highlighting which are the important ones for each research category in the forthcoming slides. As you can see, epigenetics, cancer, neuroscience, immunology. These are some of the best sellers in infectious diseases, stem cells, biosimilars, etc. We have isotype controls, we have biomarkers, we have quick detect ELISA kits. These are some of the bestsellers in each of these categories. Next, we move on to our customers. So who are our customers? So we have customers from various research areas or various research institutions. We have customers from universities. We have customers from pharma companies. We have customers from independent research centers as well. And we have customers from hospitals too. If you need any marketing materials related to ELISA kits, these are just some of the examples that I have highlighted, but you can definitely visit our website and you can access these marketing materials. We have flyers, we have brochures, we have mini brochures for ELISA kits as well. And this is not just uh, pertaining to ELISA kits as well. We have other marketing materials for other research products as well. We have brochures and flyers, mini brochures, sorry, for antibodies, assay kits, molecular biology, biochemicals, um, etc. These are some of the, and proteins as well. So we have a lot of marketing materials. In case you have any questions, in case if you cannot download, you can always email us. Um, in case if you have any questions, any tech related questions, you can contact us at tech@biovision.com. In case if you are not able to access any marketing materials, then in that case, you can contact us at marketing@biovision.com. If you have quote requests, if you have pricing requests, um, any requests related to the pricing of ELISA kits, then you can definitely contact us at quote@biovision.com. So in the table below, you can see the people who are in marketing team. So we have our general manager, we have director of product management, we have product manager for molecular biology and biochemicals. We have a senior technical research scientist. We have product manager as well as a sales specialist. That's me, of course. And we have product manager for antibodies and proteins. And we have senior marketing manager as well, whom you can contact for various marketing related questions. And if you have any questions, please let me know. In case if you do not have any questions, um, you can always email me or email us. You already have access to the slides and email addresses of all the respective people. I have already highlighted which emails you need to contact if you have any questions. Okay, so then this brings us to the end of our presentation. And just to give you a heads up, our next webinar will be on BioVision's antibodies and proteins portfolio, and it will be presented by Kin, who is the product manager for antibodies and proteins. And please save the date for our next webinar. It will be on July 28th, 2021. So thank you all for attending this webinar. And if you have questions, I'm still here. I can answer any of your questions if you have. If not, I can. end this webinar. So one of the participants over here has a question regarding our ELISA kits. One of our participant has a question regarding ELISA kits where it says, how do we process cells and tissue samples in case if we use ultrasound? So if you look at our data sheets, it tells you how to process cell and tissue samples. With regards to ultrasound, we have not tested any of our samples using this method. We generally recommend doing either a sonication or a centrifugation of the samples or treating with certain solutions to prepare your certain cells and tissue samples. We do not know how to process samples when you subject them to ultrasound. Um, m- uh, so the customer can basically try and use various ways how they can process these samples. We do not know, and we do not have a protocol for this particular um, type of cell or tissue processing using ultrasound. Um, so we do not know anything about it. Yeah. So another question that the customer, that one of our participant has is in quick detect. The HRP conjugate is not a secondary antibody. So the HRP conjugate will definitely include secondary antibody, but I don't want to give you a wrong answer, but I can definitely find out this answer and get back to you. If you can provide me your email address, or maybe if you can email me at my email address. As mentioned previously, as you can see, my email address is right here. Eh, I can definitely confirm this answer for you um, and let you know. No, it should be definitely a secondary antibody conjugated to HRP, but I can confirm this answer and definitely let you know. Any more questions? Okay. Thank you for your time.